Welcome to GeeK KetchUp. I'm Kyle Eckert alongside Chris Heck. We're two lifelong friends with a passion for all things geek. Whether it's gaming, movies, television, wrestling, comics, whatever. If it's nerdy, there's a good chance we're into it. You are listening to Chapter 6 of Season 1. Today we're taking a look at what's to come from the world of geekery in 2020. Some of the hottest video game titles, as well as a few of the blockbuster movies and television releases. But up first, we're talking about the new video game consoles coming our way this year. For the past 2 decades, gamers everywhere have witnessed an epic battle between two video game console Goliaths. A war that has lasted 3 generations and in 2020 will spill over into a 4th. Of course, we're talking about the rivalry between the Sony PlayStation and Microsoft Xbox. The original fight for console gaming supremacy may have started years earlier, but this war began when the first Sony PlayStation released on December 3rd, 1994 in Japan. Sony would follow up the PlayStation with the PlayStation 2 console in 2000, and then a year later, Microsoft's Xbox would debut as a direct competitor. The two companies would go head-to-head over the next 18 years, the Xbox 360 coming in 2005, the PlayStation 3 in 2006, then both Xbox One and PlayStation 4 dropping in 2013. With various slim and pro models along the way, we are now entering our 4th era of the console wars. In 2020, we will not only see the release of the new PlayStation console, but also the new Xbox Series X. Chris, let's jump into it here and take a look at the features, specs, and other highlights these new consoles have to offer.
Thanks, Kyle. Yeah, we're going to start here with the Xbox Series X, which was formerly known as the Project Scarlet, as it was being developed and we started first hearing information that new consoles were coming. That was Project Scarlet was the original name that we got from Microsoft as they were trying to be all, sleek and secretive. But after the announcement that just came a couple of weeks ago, we did see that the new one is actually going to be called the Xbox Series X. It's kind of an interesting name for it, but my suspicions were confirmed here when they did this, in the fact that video game consoles are moving more into the realm of an industry like cell phones, right, where everything works, everything is on the same operating system, all those kinds of things, but you have different hardware options as you go.
Yeah, just to base models and pro models and things like that.
iPhone 10, iPhone 11, iPhone Pro, whatever it may be. And we started to see some of that with the recent lines, right? We had the PS4, we had the PS4 Pro, Xbox One, Xbox One S, Xbox One X. There's been a whole bunch of them. And each one of those, the real, differentiation is what the hardware is inside. So you're almost jumping, if you went from, say, like a PS4 to a PS4 Pro or an Xbox One to an Xbox One X, you were kind of jumping ahead a little bit in the console generation because you were probably performing a little better than the baseline. But this next jump with the Series X and the PS5 is really, I think, going to be one of the biggest jumps that we've seen in the console generation in a number of years.
Yeah, it's taken a huge leap, and with every generation jump, you want to see huge leaps. But it does seem that this past generation, the 3rd generation to the 4th generation, is going to be a big one. As far as power and capabilities and really overall experience for the gamer.
Exactly. So looking here at the Series X, of course, we don't have confirmed release dates. We know that it'll be in the holiday of 2020s, holiday of 2020, which typically is the October to December season. Based on what we've seen in the past, my prediction is going to be like a mid-November release. That typically is what happens, a week or two before Black Friday. And I'm really excited about the fact that they're gonna move in this direction where they're gonna stay with just increasing hardware and allowing the consumers, people like you and I, to choose whether or not we want that increased performance. Right? It doesn't force your hand so much as it has in the past to get that new console to be able to play the latest games and get all the latest functionality, you'll
Sure.
be able to
Yeah.
stick with your current gen and play a lot of new games still, if you don't want to necessarily upgrade right away. But for other folks, maybe someone more like myself that tends to jump on things right away, I'm definitely excited for the holidays as they come up. And it'll be interesting too to see with the move to the Series X and kind of that style, how fast beyond that we'll see other, versions of the new Xbox or the PS5 come out down the road.
Yeah, like if they have a planned schedule release of, like, I think of the way, like, not necessarily, I guess iPhone haven't exactly done it this way, but they drop the iPhone on you, and then 3 months down the line, they're like, okay, well, it's time for the iPhone Color, or
Exactly.
the iPhone S or 11S,
Exactly.
however you want to look at that.
Right. And I think that we might start seeing a little bit more of that. Hopefully it won't be too fast so you don't get buyer's remorse right away, right? But another big thing that I think came with some of the information we've gotten on the new consoles, at least from Microsoft, was that they confirmed a few months back that all currently owned accessories, so I'm talking controllers, headsets, remote controls, those types of things, are going to be compatible with the new Xbox. So, if you've got to buy a new Pro controller sometime in the next couple of months or whatever, it's not as big of a risk because you know that you'll be able to use that on the next console if you choose to upgrade.
100%, because that's actually a huge deal when you go to buy a new console. I think we had a few discussions with a couple buddies who were talking about buying a Switch very recently, and they said, well, you can't just buy a console out the gate and then just take it home and play because most consoles only come with one controller. So
Yep,
if you really want to take it home and fully utilize it, there's a ton of accessories that you need to, a second controller, or maybe a charging port or things like that. So to know that the old accessories work, you'll get a lot more people maybe buying it on day one, saying, "Okay, well, I can splurge on the console purchase, but I don't have to do all the extra bells and whistles just yet." So that's really
for
nice.
sure. Yeah, especially for established gamers like, you or I or a lot of the folks that are out there that, have had a couple different generations of these consoles. You kind of build that catalog or inventory is the word I'm looking for, that inventory of those accessories. And in most cases, yeah, as soon as you buy the new one, maybe you keep them around for a while. Eventually you probably just throw them out. But and then the flip side is that, controllers these days, for a new PlayStation controller, new Xbox controller, if they're not on sale, you're talking 50 to $60
Yeah.
that you've got to shell out. So yeah, if you want to grab a new console, you need that new Turtle Beach headset, you need that extra controller. You're adding in $100 to $200 of extra purchase to what you're doing when you're picking up that $400 or $500 brand new console.
Sure, and you never want to be put in a situation where a new controller costs $50, $60, where that's the price of a game. So you're in a
Exactly.
situation where you have to make a decision: do I want another game or do I want to buy a controller? And that's
Right.
that's an awful pickle to be in. Like,
It is.
you want to go game all day, but then what happens when your friends come over, or you just want a second controller for whatever reason you may have?
Yeah,
So
it's been an issue that probably I would bet that most every gamer has gone through, as they've moved console to console, especially if you've been somebody that's been in this industry and playing games for more than probably 5 years, more than one generation of consoles. But I think that'll be a big benefit for the consumer. There have been some questions because of that, as far as whether or not the Series X will ship with a controller. I think that's a little bit extreme. I just can't imagine any console hardware getting shipped without at least one controller, right? Because you're immediately alienating your brand new
oh, right,
customer.
no way. There's no way it doesn't
Um,
ship with something.
Right, exactly. But there have been those rumors out there, so we definitely have to see exactly how everything will shake out. But let's move in here and talk a little bit about what we're seeing as far as expected technical specs for the Xbox Series X. And of course, I have to throw out the disclaimer that this is all unconfirmed. I wish I had more inside knowledge, but I don't. But we are getting a lot of reports and a lot of tidbits that have come out over the last few months. There was a big leak just in the last couple of days, I believe, that kind of took us a little bit further in the understanding of what we're probably going to see in these. But so from what we've seen so far, according to TechRadar.com, They're looking at for the Microsoft Xbox Series X a new custom designed AMD processor, which will use Zen 2 and Navi architecture. We're going to probably see something along the lines of twice the power as the current Xbox One X, which that's a pretty big
Yeah,
jump.
that's huge.
I'm running an Xbox One X right now, and I have not had any complaints. With the speed, the graphics, the 4K resolution, all of that. So when I saw, expecting twice as powerful, I was like, man, I'm ready for this.
Yeah, like goodbye loading screens.
Right, right. Some other things we've seen so far is that they are expecting it'll be capable of running games at 120 frames per second. I know those are a little bit more the speeds we see with PC gaming, and you obviously have to have a TV that can keep up with that as well. So we'll see, how much they get in. I know that the goal was to make it so every game, from what I've read, every game to run at minimum at 60 frames per second on 4K TVs. So I think anything above that will be kind of bonus.
Sure.
But along with the 120 frames per second, they're also talking about possible 8K resolution. So as we see the 8K and next generation of TVs come out, it looks like they're trying to set themselves up to be able to utilize that. And then probably the next couple things here are the biggest things that we'll see that'll change things is the new graphics and processors are going to be ray tracing capable. And for those of you that aren't familiar with that, ray tracing is really around the lighting in a game, right?
Sure.
When you see that beam of light that comes in from the window or from a fixture inside of a room, in most current gen games and really everything from the past, you would get one line, right?
Yeah.
You would see it come down on one angle through the window. It would hit the ground. It wouldn't reflect. It wouldn't shine. It wouldn't do anything
Yeah.
like that,
It would
right?
just
Like
die on the spot.
it would die on the spot, exactly. It wasn't very realistic. But with ray tracing capabilities, we've seen a lot of it in increased CGI in Hollywood. Some things I think have trickled in a little bit in certain games that have come out recently, but not the full capabilities, I think, of what we're talking about on these next gen. But we'll be able to finally see, like in a game like The Last of Us, where lighting was a big deal. Those moments where you're thinking when you're going through a broken building and the sunshine comes right through. With
Yeah.
ray tracing, the new upgraded capabilities, we should see things like that light bounce off of a piece of glass and then reflect to another point on the screen, or it'll reflect off that puddle of water. It should just give a much more immersive, realistic feel.
Yeah, that's realistic is the word that came to mind. That what you see with your human eye as you walk, down the street, or when you take a look at a creek or something, the light comes in, it bounces off the puddle, and it goes in multiple directions. You may get a glare from one angle, but not get a glare from another. So that's pretty cool. Like it just it's more immersive.
Yep.
And as games develop further on these new consoles and graphics get better and maybe VR capabilities get better, anything that immerses you deeper into the gameplay is a bonus and going to be really cool.
For sure, and it's things like that that I feel like the game developers are really going to have to start, working hard to do because, for guys like you and I, we've been gaming for 25 years. We've seen everything from 8-bit tune to, current gen stuff that's looking damn near realistic. And so, how are you going to impress us?
Yeah.
How do you take us into the next generation when things are already looking so good today? And I think ray tracing is going to be one of those keys.
Yeah. It's been a big step up in the movie industry.
For
We know
sure.
we know that it came from that ray tracing originated from the movie industry and CGI, and you look at movies like Star Wars or the Avengers that are a nice blend of CGI and maybe puppeteering and live action things. So to blur that line of what's real and what's not real, it's going to take it next level for us and really get us into the next stratosphere.
I agree, and I have a prediction that I think that as we move, into the next generation here, that, and especially with how much game developers are using Hollywood actors, Hollywood writers, and motion capture, it's gonna start getting really hard to determine, oh, I'm looking at a video game, or I'm looking at real life, or I'm looking at CGI in a AAA Hollywood blockbuster like Avengers Endgame or something. And that's really just, it's good for us, right? As
Yeah.
gamers, it's what we want to see, especially console gamers, right? Because a lot of times console gamers, we lag behind because we don't have the ability to go in and just upgrade our graphics card in our PC and push the boundaries of a game that just came out, and things like that. So really jumping in and getting on that level, I think, is going to be a big boost for the gaming community.
No, 100%. It'll be pretty sweet. Any other major specs that we want to look at here?
Yeah, the last two things here, and then we'll start jumping into the PlayStation 5. But the last two things that we know that it's going to have, um, is a solid state hard drive, which I think is really the number one impact that we're going to see as console gamers, is that move from traditional spinning hard drives that have to search through
Yeah.
thousands and thousands of pieces of information to call up what they need, to a solid state drive, which, if you're not familiar, we're not going to get into all of it, but essentially the big difference is that solid state drives have no working parts, right? They're more stable.
Sure.
They can call up information numerous times faster than traditional hard drives, and they, if you have a computer or anything today that has a solid state drive, you know the difference, because you almost
Yeah.
have zero load times for your applications to open. And man, if we can get rid of load times in video games, oh, it'll be a
Oh
good
yeah.
time to play games.
100%. 100%. Well, do you think, given with the pro models and the different levels, as far as the Xbox, historically you've been an Xbox guy. Do you think this will be a day one purchase for you, or are you gonna wait and see what they do?
It's interesting because, as we said a little bit ago, the fact that the new consoles, at least for Xbox, they're promoting, will play pretty much all of the games that come out, backwards compatible and everything. I've tried to tell myself a couple times, like, oh, you can wait, you could give it some time and grab one. You don't have to upgrade right away. But reality, unless something changes, I'm just the type of consumer that with certain products, like a game console,
Yeah.
I typically adopt early, and so maybe I don't get it on day one, but maybe by Black Friday or at least that Christmas, I'll probably pick one up.
So sometime within the first month, at least, like you're
That's what I would expect.
you're not going to be waiting in line for 4 days outside of Best Buy like we did when I bought the PlayStation 3 back in the day, with
Yeah,
with my brother. But
I
definitely
haven't
within
done
the
that
first
since
month.
the 360 release. I actually,
Yeah.
quick cool story though, but that was the last time I stood in line for a console release, was the Xbox 360 a few years back, and I actually spent an hour and a half in line next to Steve Smith, the legendary wide receiver from the Carolina Panthers, because
Yeah.
he was there too. It was an old Circuit City, and he was actually number one. His car was there in the parking lot when I showed up, and then I was number two, and so we pretty much hung out. You'd never believe how short that guy is for how beastie he played on the field, but I hadn't thought about that in a while, so I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I actually forgot that. I remember that. I remember that back when it happened, and I totally forgot that it had happened.
So yeah, I think the last piece that we know of so far here, as far as the Xbox goes, was around the GPU. There's been some different uh, theories out there as far as how powerful the processing units are going to be for the new consoles. But according to that big leak that I mentioned earlier that came out, Digital Foundry found references to the GPU in the Xbox Series X possibly producing up to 12 teraflops of power, which is absolutely massive. Teraflops, just kind of in a nutshell, is the culmination of just how fast it can process, how much it can push out at one time, and they measure that in teraflops. And so I forget what exactly the current ones are at. I want to say it was like 5 or 6, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I remember
Um,
it being like almost double, if
yeah,
not double.
Yeah, so if that lives up, it'll hit that total, or that original expectation of being twice as powerful as the Xbox One X, and I think that they're going that route because Microsoft had said their target was at minimum that 60 frames per second across the board and on 4K TVs. So they're going to have to get into that range to really be able to hit that on pretty much every game, but we will have to see. So there's a lot to be excited here. I think like I said, we're going to get some big jumps, but we're going to have to wait and see over the next couple of months as they finally start to, confirm exactly what Microsoft is going to put in this thing.
Yeah, we're just in a spot right now with these consoles where we're doing a lot of limited information and leaks and rumors. There's not a lot of hard content out there. So, hopefully between now and the holiday season, hopefully here in quarter one of
Yep.
2020, we get something concrete as far as what these machines will be able to do. We can switch it up here a little bit and move into the PlayStation, which the new PlayStation console has been confirmed. One of the few things that has been confirmed. It will be named the PlayStation 5. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone. They kept going with their numeric names.
There was some rumors saying that they were going to change it, but at this point, if you're Sony, the PlayStation name has so much brand power.
Sure.
That they should keep that name through PlayStation 174. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like, just
yeah.
keep it rolling. It works. It rolls off the tongue good. PS
Right.
whatever.
Yeah, PS.
It all
Let's
works.
say the acronym. The acronym. We're gonna be 90 years old, and the PS 174. Like that. That still sounds good. So yeah, the PS1, PS2, PS3, PS5, blah blah blah. It is also going to release around that same holiday season as the Xbox Series X. There was an unconfirmed report, a bit of a rumor floating around that it was actually going to release on November 20th, an exact
Ooh.
date, and it was going to release alongside Gran Turismo 7.
Wow, I did not hear that, but that would be a pretty big deal, especially with a new Gran Turismo at the same time.
Oh yeah, because Gran Turismo, at least in the early PlayStation years, Gran Turismo was a top title.
Oh, for sure.
For
Everybody had
PlayStation.
it.
Everybody had it. Like it was the racing game to own.
Yep.
So it would be pretty cool to see PlayStation or Sony come back and say, new console, and we're putting Gran Turismo back in the spotlight, which is pretty cool. There's also been a few rumors that a Pro version will be available. So similar to the Xbox Series X, that could be tiered. Once again, that's unconfirmed, like so many of the things that we're looking at as far as these consoles. I will say, when it comes down to unconfirmed things, that there is a planned press release or conference, expo, whatever you want to call it, Sony has planned for February. So while we're theorizing a little bit here today, I'm hoping that if this press release or expo that Sony does in February, they really debut a lot of concrete facts about what we should expect out of the PlayStation 5.
Yeah, definitely excited to see that. I know console release years are always fun years to keep your eyes out on the news, because the different companies, they try to one up each other and get ahead of each other, and they're kind of making last minute changes based on fan reactions and things like that. So I imagine we'll get some information in that. And probably every expo will get little pieces of the pie, but with you, hopefully we'll get some confirmations on some of these things and know what we're actually going to be getting.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. What's been happening with PlayStation a lot recently is there's a couple sources that have been tracking their patents and the different things that they've been patenting. And so people have been looking into that and deciphering the information and then coming up with their own rendered models of basically what the PlayStation 5 will look like. And one of the rendered models is this V shape with
the dev kit, I think, is the V shape.
Yeah, with the vents in the front and the 5 USB ports also on the front. But it's interesting, as when we started to do a little bit of research into this, that was the image that kept popping up. But then you come to find out, okay, well, that's not exactly what the PlayStation 5 is going to look like. There's no guarantee that that's what the view of it.
Right. Yeah, I think that picture, from what I saw, was what they were sending out to the developers to start working with and give feedback on. And those always tend to look a little different.
Sure.
But going back to that one-up situation, I think Microsoft really surprised everybody when they released the design and what the Series X is actually going to look like, because we hadn't seen anything from either company until that point. So
yeah,
maybe that'll be a big thing we actually get in February, is Sony kind of catching back up. Here's what it'll look like, and then maybe they'll give us like the launch date or something to one up Microsoft.
yeah. I mean, they got to go back and forth. Back and forth. It's a quick run through of the specs, and then we'll talk a little bit about some of the accessories and potential backwards compatibility. Very similar to the Xbox Series X, we're going to see customized AMD chipset, working on basically the same architecture and Navi GPU. Ray tracing support will be there as well, and the SSD storage system, the solid state drive, that will be there. 8K TV support, that has been not 100% confirmed, but theorized. It will also include a 4K Blu-ray disc drive, 3D audio. So basically matching more or less what we're going to see out of the Xbox Series X. So we won't do too deep of a dive into that as we covered that in the Xbox Series X. Interesting note from that leak earlier in the week. So you said that the Xbox Series X clocked in at 12.2?
I forget what the exact teraflops it was, but they were talking about it being right around 12.
Right around 12. So the PlayStation 5 produced 9.2 teraflops.
Oh, wow.
So
I don't think I caught that. That's a pretty decent difference.
Right, and that's actually when you said 12, and I looking here and I've got 9, I'm like, wow, okay, if Xbox is doubling what they're doing with the Xbox One, and then the PlayStation 5, which should be, for all intents and purposes, on par with the Xbox Series X, out the gate, we're already seeing that the Xbox Series X is going to be more powerful.
Right. And that's really where one of my biggest questions comes down in general, right? Because they always go back and forth, and then ultimately at the end of the day, the consoles tend to be really, really close.
Yeah.
And it's harder now with the different editions that they've come out with, the PS Pro, the Xbox One X, etc. They kind of graze it all up even more.
Yeah.
But I think the general consensus was that the PS4 was, at least at launch, a more powerful machine than the Xbox One was. And I've seen some statements here and there from Microsoft saying that their goal is to create the most powerful, console this go around. So we'll have to see how it shakes out. But, when you're designing computers, essentially, you do have to make trade-offs. They do take different approaches as far as, capacity, power management, heat management, those kinds of things. Design does come into that.
Oh, 100%.
So we'll have to see where that shakes out. But and I'm definitely not a technical expert, so the difference between 9 teraflops, 12 teraflops, we'd have to probably dig into that more to see exactly how that would shake out as far as performance.
Yeah, and what that
on
means
paper.
on the end user side, what really does that mean for you?
Right. But when we're talking about some of these things, every tick up tends to be a pretty decent enhancement. So,
Sure.
Is a difference of 3 teraflops between the two going to translate to what we see on screen and how our experiences are with each console?
And maybe it doesn't, but one difference that will make is that if Xbox can come out and say that they're the most powerful console on the market, whatever that actually means doesn't matter. That tagline will push more units because
Yeah.
you'll get your folks that just basically go off, which console is better for me, and they look at some baseline information. And if you can slap that tag on your console, that's going to draw a number of people just on
Yep.
that alone, being like, okay, well, I don't want something that's not as powerful. So
Yeah.
it'll draw your casual gamer or maybe somebody that has taken a break on for two generations or so and is just now getting back into gaming. So then they're like, oh, well, where do I start? Well, I start with the most powerful unit out there.
Right. And you definitely are always going to have your hardcore fanboys or fangirls, that are pretty much loyal to, one or the other. But you're spot on with that. There will be people that are going to be making those decisions, people that maybe don't care so much about whether they're on a Sony or a Microsoft device. They just want good gaming.
Yeah.
And I think I know we probably won't jump onto it till just a few minutes later, but I think one of the big things that come into that really will be more so, uh, with the advent of cross-platform play and some of these things where we're seeing the need for two different systems, kind of shrink a little bit, right? There's always going to be a place for them, but making those decisions between the two is going to be a little different in the future with the fact that more and more games are allowing you to play with your friends on a different console or on a PC, regardless of what you are playing on. So we can probably circle back to that in a little bit. But as you said that, it made me think like for those people, if they know that they can play any game on any platform with any of their friends, would you make that choice and say, I'm just going to go with the most powerful machine there is?
Yeah, it seems just like a blanket statement. Of course, that's what they would probably end up doing. To wrap up a few things here with the PlayStation, though, we talked about the backwards compatibility as far as accessories go on the Xbox Series X. It actually is unconfirmed if old accessories are going to work on the new PlayStation 5. The only one that they envision will work is the VR headset.
If you have it.
If you have it, PlayStation has not debuted or talked about revamping their VR headset, but they are gonna. Some leaks came out earlier this week of the new controller, which we imagine will probably be called the DualShock 5, based on every other PlayStation controller. They have moved some big news out of that DualShock 5, if that's what it's called, is that it's going to replace the rumble technology with haptic feedback. So it gives you a more realistic response in the controller in itself, like trigger resistance and different things as far as motion goes. If you're moving your character through sand, it'll feel more like sand. If they're on ice, it'll be a little more slick. When the design came out, two big changes to that controller. They've added trigger buttons on the underside, which is actually very much in line with the adaptable piece that you'll now be able to buy in early 2020 for the DualShock 4. And then also the home button is gone. So
yeah, I kind of like some of that. I like that the controller is going to be a little closer to a pro controller. I think that those under buttons, once you start to use them, you realize how beneficial they are, especially in games like first-person shooters. So kind of tightening that up makes sense. Xbox released a pro controller or the Elite controller that really gives you all of those opportunities, and I don't think Sony had done it yet. So it makes sense that they're going to catch up with that. The accessories thing I think is really a big question, and it's not a must-have, right? I don't think it's going to make or break success of either console, but just looking from a consumer standpoint, if I'm looking on launch day at which console I want to buy, and if Sony decides that no, all of your accessories on the PS4 aren't going to translate, then that's probably going to delay me in making that upgrade versus going to the Xbox Series X where I can just buy the console itself and be ready to go.
100%. In the room that I'm sitting in right now, I'm looking at a pile of PlayStation 3 controllers that have been useless for the better part of 5 years. And it also, when it comes to price points, that's going to make a big difference, because looking at the price point on the PlayStation 5, it should be around $500 if we're playing the guessing game. The PlayStation 2 was $300 at launch. The PlayStation 3 was $500 at launch. PlayStation 4 dipped a little bit and was $400 at launch. So imagine with the increase in specs and hardware there, it might go back up to $500. But if you're looking at game day purchase, you need to buy a second controller and a game and maybe a few other accessories. It could be close to a $700-$800 purchase.
Oh yeah,
if you want to tack a game or two on, and
you got to throw tax in there because Uncle Sam wants his piece.
Yeah, like that's a big deal right there. That's a big deal. And then the biggest piece surrounding the PlayStation 5, we can't not mention it, is that they keep teasing us with will or will it not be backwards compatible. And what does backwards compatibility mean as far as true backwards compatibility? Because if you're just going to give us PlayStation 4 games working on the PlayStation 5, that's great. I'd love to be able to hold on my PlayStation 4 games, but very similar to that stack of PlayStation 3 controllers, I have a stack of PlayStation 3 games that I would very much like to play on my PlayStation 5.
Yeah, it's true. And for me, one of my biggest sticking points with Sony is when it comes to some of these kinds of things, because I feel like there are certain aspects of all, of industries that shift, right? And the whole industry, if you're going to participate, you have to get on board with it. And backwards compatibility has been a huge issue and point of contention in the gaming industry for years.
Yeah.
Because up until the last couple of
Yeah.
we hadn't had a guarantee of any sort of backwards compatibility. You had to keep that console around. That started to change some with the PS3 and the Xbox 360, and then to the PS4 and Xbox One. But a lot of it really came more through you having to repurchase games because they were ported over, remastered, remade. And so, there's a lot of factors there, but I just think that when it comes to backwards compatibility and the current accessories, right, just get on board, Sony. Do the right thing. I know it takes a little extra coding and a little bit extra effort, but just do the right frickin' thing and let people, that want to play old games still have them. Because, we can add all these things to our libraries, right? On Xbox and PlayStation, you have this whole library of digital games, the whole 9 yards, what you have licenses to based on what you bought. And to move forward and then them just say, hey, you see all these? Yeah, you can't use them. I think that would be a big disservice to consumers. So it's a huge question to answer. And for me, if we see Sony choose to go a different route than Microsoft there, I think that could be another one of those sticking points that would start to shift, some people at least. Not all, but some people to Microsoft.
100%, 100%. I mean, it's that fact it keeps you from going to retro gaming stores and picking up old consoles and rolling the dice with some of those old consoles. I think of the tail end of my PS2, it just bricked itself towards the end. So you roll the dice when you buy old consoles to play old games. So, like you said, Sony, do the right thing and give us full backwards compatibility, not some half-baked, we're going to give you this, but not that. Give us full backwards compatibility.
And it's a good segue here to actually get into talking about the cross-platform play, because this is another area where Sony really kind of held out, and I thought that it was a big mistake. When we saw games like Rocket League and Fortnite come out, and really especially Fortnite because Epic Games has pushed so hard on this, but we saw them really push some of the companies like Microsoft into allowing that cross-platform play. And Microsoft jumped on board pretty quickly. They immediately started allowing the cross-platform between Xbox and PC. And then, surprisingly, Nintendo jumped in there with them. And so, for a while, you could play Fortnite against people on Nintendo Switch, PC, or Xbox. And then, ultimately, it got opened up for the players on PlayStation 4. But Sony was very uptight about it.
And they were hesitant.
Yeah, they were very hesitant about doing it, and then they finally seemed to back off. I think press releases from a couple months back, said that they had finally opened up and we're gonna allow that, to happen more. But it's such a great service to have the cross-platform play. I absolutely love it. I think it increases the competition. It's amazing to be able to play games with your friends that maybe otherwise you wouldn't have. The one I had here was Dauntless that came out.
Yeah, I had that written down too as well.
Yeah. I mean, Kyle and I, Dauntless was a free game that came out. It's kind of a free version of Monster Hunter, and it came out. Kyle grabbed it on PlayStation. I had it on my Xbox because I had hard drive capacity issues on my PlayStation. But we were able to play and take down a bunch of monsters. We put in a good number of hours on that.
100%, yeah.
And it worked great.
Oh, well, absolutely. I thought it was groundbreaking, and I remember the first night we did it, knowing you were on your PlayStation, or I was on my PlayStation, you were on your Xbox. It was groundbreaking for our group of friends, our gaming group of friends, that it was the first time that we'd ever been able to do something like that, and it felt like something that we had talked about since we were kids.
For sure, we talked about it all the time. You were always a PlayStation guy. You've never owned an Xbox.
Yep.
I had a PlayStation 2 and never owned a PlayStation 3. I have a PlayStation 4 now, but I was always an Xbox guy.
Sure.
So it was a big wall there for a while until the more recent generation where I was, blessed enough to be able to get both.
To do both, yeah.
But the idea of not having to buy both is really where it comes in, right? Like the idea that I can just be an Xbox guy and you can be a PlayStation guy, and 90% of games we can still play together is a gaming utopia that I want to be in.
Yeah, I would love to see this become the norm just across the board, especially with some bigger titles. You'll always have, that's the thing, is these companies will always have their single player exclusives.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Like, that's never going to go away. Your Horizon Zero Dawns and your Spider-Man exclusives and things like that on the
Halo
PlayStation
and
side.
Gears
Halo
on
and Gears
Xbox.
on the Xbox side. You're always going to have your single-player exclusives, but why not give the gaming community that multiplayer cross-platform capabilities? It would just be universally awesome, and I think it might see an uptick in gaming across the board.
Well, that's what I think too. Is I think if I'm a game developer, I think that I would want that. Just simply the fact that I could sell my game probably to more people.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that because there have definitely been games that you've gotten on PlayStation and were like, man, this was sweet, but I chose not to buy it because I only had an Xbox at the time, or vice versa.
It's
And so
been
now,
the main reason I've never been able to play Halo.
right,
It's
right.
kind of sad because I've been so blindly faithful to Sony. I've never gotten to experience Halo.
Yeah, so I mean, I really am hoping that that is one thing that we see just getting ingrained into console gaming and that industry as we go into the next generation. I think the last thing we had here to touch on, was also with the rise of game services,
Yeah.
the on-demand game services. So you've got the Xbox Game Pass on Microsoft, and then now PS Now for PlayStation. And it's something I think that's really getting more and more traction. But I don't know how much you've really used them, but I signed up for Game Pass right away. I think a couple years ago now it was. Didn't use it too much at first, but then as time went by, it got better and better, more games, and now I probably download at least 1 to 2 games every couple of months from there just to fill in some gaps or check out things that I was not going to pay $60 for.
Yeah. I I have flirted with PlayStation Now. The price point for PlayStation Now was really too high for a long time.
It was what, $20 for originally?
It was $20 a month.
Yeah, a month.
Which
Yeah,
is
Microsoft's always been 10
yeah,
for
and
Game Pass.
it very recently dropped to 10, which has made it a little more accessible. And since it's dropped to 10, I've thought about it more and more. Pretty much every month that goes by, I considering adding it to my monthly purchases and monthly subscriptions. But I did do my 7-day trial, and then I have bought 1 month. I think there was a couple months back where I kind of went into a weekend where I knew I was going to have a lot of gaming time, but I didn't have a specific game I was, driving to play. And then I got the itch to play an old Dynasty Warriors game. And the full suite of Dynasty Warriors is available on PlayStation Now. So I bought it. I paid the $20. I figured, $20 is worth 3 days of just solid, like bouncing around, playing different games. And I played a couple different Street Fighters, a few different indie titles, and yeah, I had fun. I actually had the most fun playing the Sid Meier Civilization game. But I like city builder games, so there's that. And I had a good time, but at the end of it, I was like, it's not good enough to justify a $20 a month.
Right.
And that's really where, when you look at the two and you compare them, Xbox's price point being $10 a month, it was always winning over what Sony was doing at the $20 a month. The other big difference, I thought, if you're going to look at it like hard facts, Xbox was putting and has been putting legitimate AAA titles on
That
their
is a
service.
big difference. Yeah.
Well-
Anything Microsoft committed a while ago that anything that was from their studios was a first party title that they were going to put it on Game Pass day one. So like Gears 5, I would have never bought Gears 5. I'm not a huge Gears fan. I played the originals and then kind of got away from them, but I downloaded it because it was available. Forza Horizon 4 was the same. Outer Worlds, like any of those. Halo, the new Halos will be on there.
Yeah.
And so they've really been pumping it, and it's not just there. I mean, there's been some other titles that they've put out, like the Outer Worlds was there day one. So it's really been nice to be able to grab some of those, because you think $10 a month, 120 a year. That's two AAA games, bought. So as long as you download at least 2 of those games a year and play them for a little bit, you've gotten your money's worth, and you typically get a lot more out of it. So
Yeah.
I definitely am hoping that we see that, just continue to expand as we move forward. Digital media continues to expand. But, clearly we still have a lot to learn about the next generation of the consoles that are coming our way. But as weird as it sounds, the holidays are going to be on us faster than the Flash can run from Central City to Star City. So, it'll be here. I know we just finished up with Christmas and all of that, but we're going to blink and it's going to be here, and we'll all be looking at these new consoles. The one thing that I do know for sure, the one thing I'll leave you with for this one is that E3 and the various gaming expos are going to be quite exciting this year. They always are during console launch years. So, keeping with the spirit of previewing what is coming in 2020, we're going to move over and take a look at the top video games that are releasing on the current gen, meaning PS4 and Xbox One, that Kyle and I are either excited about or at least interested in. So, let's jump in here, Kyle, and start out with one I know a lot of people are excited about, that Final Fantasy VII remake.
Ooh, 20 years in the making. Yes, indeed. The Final Fantasy VII remake is headed our way on March 3rd. It will be, action RPG. It's been developed and published by Square Enix, who did the original back in 97. It is a complete remake of that 1997 PlayStation 1 game. Follows mercenary Cloud Strife as he joins up with the eco-terrorist group Avalanche to battle the Shinra Corporation, who are draining the planet's life energy.
Damn,
so there's a
Shinra.
lot of damn Shinra. The game does go much deeper. It's not just all about eco-terrorism, but it goes much deeper into Cloud's past and his odd connection to the legendary soldier Sephiroth. I won't go too much far into the story, even though it is a 20-year-old game. I'll leave you to play through it to get the full experience, because that story is pretty amazing.
One of the best in gaming history.
Absolutely, absolutely. The gameplay, though, taking a switch off the traditional JRPG turn-based, is going to be more similar to what we saw in Final Fantasy 15 and Dissidia Final Fantasy, where the exploration and battle both take place in real time. But for those of you that love that turn-based style, it has been confirmed that there will be an optional turn-based, more classic JRPG for you to switch to if you don't want that action-oriented. Because Final Fantasy 15 gets a little chaotic.
It
so
does.
At times. So I imagine Final Fantasy 7 will as well. So if people want to slow down and go turn-based, that option is there for them.
I know that's been a little bit of an interesting point when we've talked about this with some of our other buddies. Some people were pretty hardline, like I prefer the turn-based. Other people, like myself, have really been into the live action. Like, I loved what they did in Final Fantasy 15, and I actually really liked what they did in Kingdom Hearts 3. And I know Kingdom Hearts always had more live action, but I kind of think that Kingdom Hearts 3 is probably the closest to what we're gonna see in Final Fantasy 7, because you just had so much going on. You had the team of people, attacking. You could call in summons. You could call in all this magic. So, like, on the screen sometimes it looked like a freaking, electronic dance festival just on your screen with all the lasers and stuff. Right. But we'll definitely have to see how that shakes out for Final Fantasy VII, because it's taking something that many of us have played multiple times, and then they're gonna change it on us.
They are going to switch it up, and as Chris mentioned, with the magic and summons, par the course with most Final Fantasy series, you'll be able to use physical attacks, magic, various items, summons, and special attacks, and limit breaks, all in combat as well. The big thing that is kind of like made me iffy on the game is they did announce that the game is going to be released in episodic installments.
It's a big question mark.
It does. It's a game that was 3 discs on the PlayStation 1, and it was probably around 36 hours of gameplay. I know that the the first disc alone was 24 hours. I remember that sticking in my memory. And then the third disc was basically just the final boss. But they did announce that it's going to be released in episodic installments, but they said that they did this to allow players more time to explore key areas. And mainly, it's this first installment, which is going to be centered around the first half of the game where you're in Midgard.
Yep.
And when you're in Midgard, you don't get to do too much exploring of the city itself in the 1997 original. So they said that they want this first episode to be all based around Midgard and allow players to truly explore the city.
Yeah, I think that would be cool. I'm so unsettled by the episode approach. Like, first and foremost, I trust Square. Square's been making some of the best games, almost across the board for 20, 30, 40 years. I don't know how long it's been. They've been making games going back to the original NES. But at the same time, it just feels weird that we're going to have to pay multiple times. I would say probably as much as $60 each time, depending on how big these games come out and when they come out. But the fact that we're going to have to do that 2, 3, 4 times to get one entire game that we've already been playing for 25 years feels weird. And so we'll have to see how that shakes out. I really hope it's not a money grab and that they really do deliver on, because what they're promoting is that each one's going to be like their own game. We're going to get tons of new stuff. And if that is the case, then we'll all be fine at the end of the day. But when they first announced it, it felt weird.
It does feel weird, especially because if you're a gamer that likes to just blast through a game, you're going to get to the end and you're going to want more, and we don't know how long we're going to have to wait.
That's a good point, too. How long between episodes is it going to be?
I'm hoping that it's not too long, because in a recent leak, somebody saw some box cover art where it's actually going to be a timed PlayStation exclusive.
Oh.
So it will eventually come to Xbox and PC, but the Xbox PC release date is March 3rd, 2021.
So they'll do the year. Okay.
So you get
maybe they drop the second one or something like a year later, but like episode 1 will move to Xbox in a year, but then maybe they drop episode 2 for PlayStation around that same time.
Possibly.
Something like that.
I'd prefer to see something more like 6 months.
Yeah, me too.
Right,
we're all going to want it so much.
Yeah, we originally saw footage for this back in 2015.
It's been a while since they announced it.
It's been so long since they said that they were going to do this, since we saw that original footage.
Yeah.
So it's like we've been waiting so long, and you're going to make us do it in installments? It's driving me nuts.
Yep. But hey, the initial release is right around the corner. I think it's definitely the most probably the most exciting game overall for this year. But the fact that we get it so early is going to be a plus as well. It's right in time for your birthday, bro.
It is. It's actually on our buddy Mike Fee. It's on his birthday.
Oh, there you go. Even better. So we're going to keep running through here. We got a couple others to highlight here. Next one up, I think, comes out in April. It's going to be April 16th. It is CyberPunk 2077. I know a lot of people are pretty pumped about this. It's developed by the same company that did the Witcher series, so there's been a lot of hype around The Witcher. And kind of a side note, I saw that the Witcher 3 Wild Hunt game, which has been out for years, has actually jumped up. It was one of the top downloaded games on Steam recently. It's been promoted all over Xbox and PlayStation lately, so I've been just happy to see them get kind of a bump after the show came out. But anyways, so CD Projekt Red, I have to also throw a plug in. They're one of my favorite game companies, game developers. I remember when I bought The Witcher 3 originally, it came with a personalized thank you note card that was in the disc, the box when you'd still buy those.
That's super cool.
and literally, it was literally just thanking you for buying the game. Like, they've always come across as just one of the purist companies, I guess, if that's kind of a weird word to use, but just somebody that actually looks out for the fans. They never charge for DLC for the Witcher games. They believe that they put out a quality product from the get-go, and then anything else that comes out, you've already essentially paid for by buying the game. So that's my plug for CD Projekt Red. Everybody should support them. But back to Cyberpunk. It'll be their first game outside of the Witcher series in years. It's going to be releasing on PS4, Xbox One, and Google Stadia. I did find out, I didn't know this until I was doing a little bit more research for our chapter here, that the inspiration for the Cyberpunk 2077 game is from a existing RPG tabletop game called
Yeah.
CyberPunk. And it was originally published by Talsorian Games in 1988, so it's something that's been around. And while I was like, "Whoa, that's crazy," it also made sense to me once I learned it because of the fact that CD Projekt Red clearly likes to adapt their games from other IPs. The Witchers were
Yeah,
short
book
stories
series.
and novels. It was
Yeah.
books, and then they took it. So they're kind of doing the same thing here, just using a different version of an IP. But all in all, the Cyberpunk is going to be a futuristic first-person combat driven game where the player assumes the role of essentially a mercenary cyborg that's going to be fairly customizable. I would say probably mostly customizable. These games that CD Projekt Red makes are always really big and deep and very involved, so I expect a lot of customization there. It's expected to be very open world with multiple areas to explore. And then, of course, at E3 last year, we got the big reveal where Keanu Reeves,
Ooh, Keanu Reeves.
Keanu came out on stage and actually debuted the fact that he is in this game. He's one of
Yeah.
I think he's going to be one of the main NPCs. And I could almost stop there because, Keanu Reeves in a video game, it's going to
Right.
be amazing. But all in all, I'm expecting a massive game here, just like they did with the Witcher games. Graphics and the motion capture in the trailers that we've seen so far look out of this world. Top notch graphics.
Yeah.
And so I personally am super excited to grab this, especially on the 4K TV. I just think it's going to have some of the best visuals that we've seen on these current gens.
Yeah, I've heard that the game is going to be super immersive. Of course, the first person aspect for me doesn't quite do it. I'm not too big on first person games, but that's a personal taste. But I have heard the game's going to be crazy immersive in this first person view, and that their CD Projekt Red is shooting for a game that has 0 load screens.
That
So
would
it makes
be
it
amazing.
totally immersive.
Yeah, that would be amazing. And you see some of that accomplished, but there's very few that have accomplished a no load screen experience,
Yeah,
especially on
it's
something so big. But if there's a company that can do it or that I would believe it, I mean, it would be these guys based on their past
Yeah,
track
100%.
record.
And you got to support him because from what we've read on this game, that it's taken the better part of 8 years to make.
Yeah.
It's been in development for so long, and in a gaming landscape that's dominated by yearly releases, and if it's your cup of tea, there's nothing wrong with your Assassin's Creeds and your Call of Duties and your games that come out every year, because I have a few that I pick up as well.
We all do.
But it's really refreshing to see a studio commit to doing something long term and then do it right.
Well, and exactly, and that's really where it comes down to. Is everything I've ever seen from them is that it all comes down to they will not release a game until it's ready to go. They're not going to pull some bullshit like Anthem where they're just going to send it out even though they know it's broke. Like, they are going to take the time, and if they had to, I mean, it's coming out in April. I'm pretty confident that that'll happen. But if they felt like they needed to move it to the next consoles just to be able to hit on the promises they've made, I wouldn't put it past them to do it. So
Yeah.
hopefully it doesn't. I'm ready to play this game, but I'll trust in them any day of the week because they're committed to providing quality experiences.
Well, moving on to another game that we'll see here in 2020 is a game that actually did push back their release date, and it was The Last of Us 2. It's scheduled to come out on May 29th. Originally, it had a February release date, but they pushed it back for extra development, and as far, I'm sure Chris will agree with me, if you need an extra 4 months to develop a game, take those 4 months. Do it. Because give us that experience. But Naughty Dog, it's developed by Naughty Dog, published by Sony Interactive. It is an action-adventure game sequel to the original Last of Us, which came out in 2013 on the PlayStation 3. This story is set 5 years after the events of that first game. It's in a post-apocalyptic world where there's like a mutated fungus that has infected the population, turned them into zombie-like creatures. They're not exactly zombies, but they're, for all intents and purposes, they're zombies.
It's in that realm.
It's in that realm. You play as Ellie from the first game, so she was around 13, 14 in the first game, so 5 years later. She's 19 now, and she's been grizzled and seen the world, and she's got a lot of hate built up, and she's tired of seeing her loved ones around her killed and murdered and dying for various reasons because it is post-apocalyptic, so on
When
top
they
of
created, sorry, go ahead.
no, quite a world. No, they created like a true crazy environment.
Yeah, and it was very believable. And when you played through the first one, it was so engrossing and so dramatic that I remember literally my wife. We were just dating at the time, and it was the only video game where I've ever had anybody demand that I only play it when they were around because she wanted to see what was happening to Joel and Ellie and the NPCs. It was like watching a movie as you played through it.
Yeah, 100%. And that's Naughty Dog's kind of claim with their Uncharted series. They're all very flowing as far as the cinematics to the gameplay, the
Yep.
graphic level. It all is very seamless. So, and you in the game you use a variety of type of weapons, including guns. There's a bow. One thing that they have upped in this new one, as far as the gameplay mechanics, that the crafting weapons, we should see an overhaul in how you craft weapons. So in the original, you would come across maybe a lead pipe or a baseball bat, and then you'd come across a box of nails. You'd be able to tape them together and increase the impact of that weapon, of that baseball bat you were holding. So all of that going on with the zombie apocalypse. So their combat mechanics got overhauled. There's a huge stealth element to that game where you can kind of pick and choose as you go through certain areas whether or not you just want to go whole hog and whack off some zombies, or if you kind of want to use a stealth system and sneak through. So you'll see a lot of stealth and agility and movements. And one thing that the game director, Neil Druckmann, has said, that along with all of the overhaul of the engine and the combat mechanics, that you really wanted to get across Ellie's desperation and resourcefulness and unique agility when
Okay.
taking on these zombies, and the new antagonist, which I imagine it's going to be like a gang of some sorts. From what we've seen in the trailers, she's going to lose a loved one and then go out on a story of revenge on
Gotcha.
this group of guys.
Yeah, she's a badass. I know it's got huge shoes to fill after how insanely successful the first one was. It was one of the top-rated games at the time. It was Game of the Year, I believe,
Yeah.
when it released in the whole 9 yards. It's got all the accolades. But because of that, to be honest, I'm really interested just to see if they can live up to that. And Naughty Dog has a good track record, but when you create out the gate, a piece of work, a book, an album, whatever it is, that is just so good, so captivating. The characters of Joel and Ellie were you just had to know more about them. You
Yeah.
had to know what happened to them. And, I'm excited to see the continuation, but I really want to know, A, if they can live up to that standard truly, and then B, if they will be able to introduce us to new characters that will captivate us just as much.
I hope so. I hope so. They did in the second trailer that came out, they showed Joel, because in the first few trailers, Joel wasn't there, and a lot of people were saying, okay, well, where's Joel? Where's
Right.
Joel? If this is only 5 years after, like, what has happened? If you've played the first one, it does end on a bit of a cliffhanger
Yep.
where it's very open-ended, and that's where you said it's got big shoes to fill, because the first one was so good at storytelling and background and making you really feel for these characters. And then the way it ends, and I won't spoil the way the first one ends, it could have just lived in isolation.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it
It-
could have stayed by itself and never.
Yeah. Joel makes a decision at the end of that game. Once again, I won't spoil what that decision was, but it creates this, okay, well, if this game just lived in a bubble, it could very easily live in a bubble. They've chosen to move forward with a sequel, which we're a little iffy about, but trust in Naughty Dog because they haven't gone wrong so far. As far as the Uncharted series is great, Crash Bandicoot's great. So,
Oh yeah.
hope
Oh, yeah.
that
We'll
the
be
sequel lives up.
pre-ordering all these games, at least for the first three we talked about here.
Yeah.
But we'll move in here to the last one we had on our list as far as the primaries to highlight. Not so sure if I'll be pre-ordering this one. I think there's still some question marks out, but we do have an Avengers focused game coming out on May 15th. It's being developed by Crystal Dynamics and Eidos Montreal, published by Square Enix. So it's got some big names here. There's a lot
Yeah.
of weight as far as game developers go here because Crystal Dynamics is who makes the Tomb Raider games.
Right.
And so this is actually going to be their first non-Tomb Raider game since 2005.
Okay.
So there's a lot on the line, you know, but the Tomb
Yeah.
Raider games for the most part throughout the years were always solid. I know that the most recent Tomb Raider games have been really good. And so, you know, I go back and forth on this Avengers game, but when I learned, I didn't realize until I was doing some additional research here that it was Crystal Dynamics, and that kind of gave me an uptick as far
Yeah.
as hope for it. It is set to release as well on PS4, Xbox One, and Google Stadia. It's looking like it's going to be third-person combat action, and you're going to be playing as your favorite, you know, the big four Avengers: Thor, Iron Man, Captain America, and Hulk. I think that they've shown at least maybe as unlockables or NPCs that we're going to see some others like Hawkeye and Black Widow. Pretty much the cast from the movie, right?
Yeah.
The main cast that we've been seeing.
I think the one protagonist that we're gonna get that is a little off the wall is Kamala Khan.
Yep.
Is Miss Marvel.
Miss
She got her own unique trailer. So
Yep.
that could be pretty cool.
Yeah, so we'll have to see how that goes. It looks like they're promoting 4-person online co-op play, so you know it will be possible to actually roll through with your buddies as the full Avengers squad. I know some of the trailers, it looked like they actually were jumping, you know, in one level they were jumping from, you know, Thor to Iron Man to Captain and kind of playing as each inside one mission. So, you know, some really cool things there. I think it'll come down to really how open world this game is and then how long it is, as far as really how successful it is. But it seemed like kind of the biggest question mark or reaction that it got when they dropped the trailers from the community was, you know, visually the game looks pretty good overall graphically, but people were not too happy about the air quotes, I'll use the word unique design on the Avengers was. You know, they don't look like Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr. and it's kind of more like a comic situation where
Right.
every story they kind of look a little unique or their own version. So I don't know if you had any thoughts there, but it seemed like that was really where people were getting stuck on this.
I'm really excited for this game, like through the roof excited, because I think it's the first time anyone's tried to tackle a Marvel Avengers game like this.
That's true.
Other than, you know, you get your Lego games, and those have been fun, and the Marvel Ultimate Alliance games, that series is fun, but that's more of a top-down feel.
Right.
So I'm really excited. This will be a pre-order for me, but I'm a comic geek, and I'm an Avengers geek, and I love everything that they put out. But I do agree that there's been a lot of hate or a lot of question marks around the style choices of the cast. But coming from the comic book world, where like Chris Evans isn't my like one and only Captain America.
Sure. Yeah.
Like I'm a little more accepting to that, but I could see how the casual fan or someone else, where we've had Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man for 10 years.
Right.
We've had
And I think
Chris
that's where
Evans.
it comes down to.
So
People feel like those are the characters now, despite, you know, 50 years of comic history.
yeah, like that is the look that they should have gone for. So they made some bold choices in going with different directions. But I'll say this, as far as that cast, I do believe in what this voice acting cast can do, because there are some big names here. As far as like Nolan North, who is the voice of Nathan Drake.
Yep.
He is playing Iron Man. Now, I think that's kind of odd because like we're so ingrained to hear Robert Downey Jr.'s voice in our head. So when you hear Nolan North, he also did the voice of Connor Kent in Young Justice, and he's, you know, Nolan North is a huge voice actor.
Right.
So there's plenty of things I'm not listing here. So, but it's weird to see him as Iron Man, but it's also he's a proven voice actor, so I believe in him. And then we also have Troy Baker, who's doing the voice of Bruce Banner. Troy Baker does the voice of Joel from The Last of Us.
Okay. I didn't know that one.
So that's pretty sweet. And then we're also looking at Travis Willingham. He's doing the voice of Thor. And he has done Thor on several occasions, including the Avengers Assembled animated series.
Okay.
And he also he did the voice of Jarro in Jedi Fallen Order, the master from
Yep.
Jedi Fallen Order. And so there's some big name actors here. Laura Bailey is doing the voice of Black Widow, similar to the voice of Thor. Laura Bailey has voiced Natasha Romanoff several of times, including Avengers Assemble, Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3. And then she was also Mary Jane in the Spider-Man game.
Okay.
So we
Yeah,
get
I knew
these
about Nolan.
actors.
Yeah, I knew about Nolan North, but not about the others, and that is a good aspect as far as giving confidence. Even though they may not look exactly as expected, all of those actors, as voice actors you just named, have a strong pedigree. Obviously, experience with the source materials. So that makes me a little bit more excited that everything will come off a little bit more true to form, even though the visual aspect of them may be a little odd.
Yeah, I think the one big question mark as far as the cast, and it's Jeff Sheen or Jeff Shine. I apologize if I'm saying his name incorrectly. He's Captain America, and he of the group, he's probably has the least filmography
Okay.
or voice acting cred. He's done a few things. He did Love, Death, and Robots, which is an animated series on Netflix. He did a couple voices there. He was in the Walking Dead game. But it's interesting that you're going to put somebody with the least amount of voice acting experience in such an iconic role as Captain America.
That's true. It could
So
make or break the whole thing.
I really hope he comes through. I have confidence in this game, but once again, I'm very biased when it comes to Avengers and comic book things. I love it all. As a Harry Potter fan, I'll say that like you look at the books and the movies, a lot of people are like, well, it's not true to the books. It's not true, this and that. You just got to look at it's a different take on the same source material and
Right.
love it all the same. So I'm really hoping that the Avengers comes through in that fashion where no, it's not going to be Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr. and those faces that we're familiar with, Scarlett Johansson, but the source material is solid and the cast is solid and you got to believe in Square.
And the good developers, yep. Yeah. So we'll see. I definitely think out of the four we just highlighted that it's probably like my number four. But if we get a little bit closer to May, they keep releasing, good trailers, good information, and maybe those initial reviews are strong, then I definitely could see picking it up, even if I don't end up getting that pre-order in before it launches. So with that, we also wanted to touch on just real quick before we move on a couple other notable games that are coming out this year. Obviously, the four we just mentioned are kind of our big four, the ones we absolutely are looking towards. But there are some others here. So we've got Doom Eternal on March 20th.
Which is another first person shooter, which doesn't tick my box, but Bethesda needs a bounce back.
They do. They need a bounce back. The first Doom was pretty good. It got some unique aspects to it. This one looks crazy, to be honest. But I'm not sure if I'm gonna pick it up right away or wait for like a sale or something down the road. The next one up we had here, though, I know is one that you are really looking forward to, but we don't have an exact date on it yet. We just know it's coming summer 2020, and that's Ghost of Tsushima.
Yeah, there's so many rumors and unconfirmed reports about this game. It feels like they've just been pulling it out from under us for so long, pushing it back and pushing it back. I've seen some crazy things that it could be anywhere from a Samurai Red Dead, but that's not exactly what I expect. I expect something more on par with other PlayStation exclusives with the over-the-shoulder and maybe some platforming graphics and a good story. One interesting note about that game that I've heard is I heard that there wasn't going to be a mini-map.
Oh, interesting.
So we have to see how that plays out, especially with what we've seen so far and how that would work out. But I'm really excited. I just need it to get here. I just need
it. The concept is amazing. Anything samurai is I'm in. I'm open to looking at, especially because we don't see it a ton. But really the bigger question is whether or not it's going to be a Sony exclusive that is top tier and amazing, like a Last of Us or Spider-Man, or is it going to be one of the flops? Like Order 1886 and some of those where they looked amazing visually. You thought that they were going to be on point, but then you get in them and they're like a 10-hour short little movie clip. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but
wham bam and it's done.
yeah, it's like one or the other with Sony exclusives lately. They're either these just top tier amazing can't miss games, or they are short odd duds,
Yeah.
with horrible reviews. So we'll have to see, but hopefully that'll actually release.
I just need a date. Just give me a date.
So next up, we had Dragon Ball Z. Is it Kakarot?
Yeah,
Kakarot?
Kakarot.
All right,
Kakarots.
all right,
Yeah,
got it. Well, I got it right, and I'm not even a Dragon Ball Z guy.
there
So
it is. Yeah,
uh,
Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, set to release on January 17th. It should be an open world RPG set in the Dragon Ball Z universe. Could be pretty cool. That's the first time we've ever seen anything from that IP in an open world. Little suspicious on this one though, because the developer is CyberConnect 2, and they are very limited on what type of games they've made. They've pretty much only known for the Dot Hack series, which I don't know if you're familiar with the Dot Hack
not really.
series.
Not
It's
really.
an MMO RPG, so it feels like a big jump to go from a series that's an MMO RPG to an open world. And if you're
Single
putting
player game.
if you're putting the Dragon Ball Z title on it, like that's a serious fan base that's gonna have high expectations. So we'll see what happens.
That's fair. Yeah, and January 17th is right around the corner, so we'll get some eyes on that one here in about a week or so. No, 2 weeks. So next up here is one that I know I'm a little bit excited for, Neo 2, coming out March 13th. I know that Neo, the very first one, which was a samurai game that was very Dark Souls-like, and personally I thought it was maybe the best Souls-like game that was not made by From Software that I've played. I
Right.
know there's been a few, the Remnant, the Surge, a bunch of different ones that have come out, and they've all been, kind of a notch below. And I felt like Neo was right there. It was really close. Super awesome samurai combat and a very dark story. It might be a little tough for me to pick this one up at launch, given the proximity to some of these other games that are coming out. With Final Fantasy at the beginning of like the week before, and then Cyberpunk right after. But I definitely will be looking to grab that one at some point this year.
I saw that it was a prequel, which is pretty cool.
Oh, I didn't realize that they're gonna do more of a prequel story.
Yeah, it was a prequel
Okay,
story.
well,
I didn't play the first one. It's in my library. It was a PS Plus free download of one of the months a couple months ago, so I haven't played it, but it's in my library. I did see that it was a prequel.
that's cool. I'll have to go look at that. I did not catch that detail, but that gives me a little bit more intrigue. So moving on from there, the last two we had here to call out was the next one we got is a remake, or I guess a remaster. Really, is more of a way to put it.
Yeah.
After the success of the remaster of Resident Evil 2, they are going to be releasing Resident Evil 3 on April 3rd.
Given the overwhelming amount of success of the Resident Evil 2 remake, I feel like it puts a lot of pressure on the Resident Evil 3 remake.
That's for sure.
In a good way, because the Resident Evil 2 remake was game of the year for a lot of people.
It got a lot of critical acclaim. Yeah.
But I don't know if it was one of those things when it was put in development, they were like, oh, well, we're just going to start making some remastering and remaking these old Resident Evil games. And then all of a sudden, Resident Evil 2 remake, like, blows everybody's mind. So people are like, oh, shit.
I imagine it was
Resident Evil 3 has to be good.
Yeah, I imagine it was in the works given how soon it was coming out, because Resident Evil 2 was just earlier this year, and now you've got this one coming out. But I didn't play the Resident Evil 2 remake as many times as I looked at it. I feel like I should be playing them given how well they've been received. But I just have not yet been able to bring myself to go back to Raccoon City.
Yeah. It's been $20 on the PlayStation Store for about 3 weeks. Or maybe even longer, between the Black Friday sale and then the holiday sale on the PlayStation Store. It's been $20, and I've looked at it every single time I've turned on my PlayStation. But I would just be digging a deeper hole as far as games I need to play, so I haven't committed.
Exactly. I'll wait for that real good downtime. All right, and then the last one we have here to call out as far as games coming this year. This one is actually a TBD, so I guess it is possible, but that we don't see it until next year. But all initial announcements or feedback that we've heard has been that they are going to do this and bring it to Xbox this year, and that is for Phantasy Star Online 2. This is a wildly successful MMO that has been out in the markets outside of the United States. I'm sure that there are people here that play them if they're using different, VPNs or whatever it may be, but it's never been on console. It's not been in the United States widely available. I don't know as much as I want to know about this game. All I know is that when I saw the trailer in E3 when Phil Spencer made the announcement at the Microsoft conference that they were going to bring this here, that I was definitely interested. I saw dragons, I saw knights, I saw samurai. I don't know. There was literally like everything that you could think of that would be awesome seemed to be in this trailer, and probably because it's been out for so long, you know, in other markets that it's been able to build up like most MMOs do, right? But I've been flirting with some different MMOs like Black Desert and Final Fantasy 14 and stuff recently. I really want to get into one, but I just haven't found one that is stuck yet, right? So for me, this is one that I'm kind of keeping eyes out on. That as it finally does release to Xbox, I'll probably be checking it out. So
100%, 100%. But it should be an exciting year for new video game titles, as we expect the developers to be pushing the old generation to its full extent and also utilizing the new hardware coming our way to bring us the latest and greatest. We've explored what's to come from video games, but now we're going to switch gears a little bit and end things with some of the biggest movies and television shows we can expect to see in 2020. I'll kick it off here with the biggest movies that we're looking at coming at us this year. The first one on my list is Black Widow from Marvel Studios. It should kick off Phase 4 of the Marvel Studios saga, and it's coming our way May 1st. Chris, are you excited for Black Widow, or are you feeling like, it's, we'll see what happens?
I mean, I'm pretty interested in anything Marvel puts out, first and foremost. They've just proven and earned that trust, right, that you can pretty much sit down and watch any Marvel film right now, and it's going to be, quality, it's going to be entertaining. Black Widow was never a top character for me, but, I do love me some Scarlett Johansson. Who doesn't? She's in black leather, come on. So give me some more of that. And it does look like it's got a good cast with David Harbour and some of those others. So I don't know if this will be one I catch in theaters, but I will definitely catch it at least once it releases for digital rent.
It feels like she's been in the Marvel universe so long, and the fans have been asking for her to have a solo movie of her own.
Oh, she deserves it.
She deserves it. So well done.
100%.
Also on the Marvel front, we should see the Eternals on November 6th, and the New Mutants, which is not a Marvel Studios movie, but that New Mutants is coming our way April 3rd. It's being put up by 20th Century Fox. That one should be pretty interesting because it's going to be like a horror movie. This is an interesting move for a Marvel, but once again, the New Mutants is not a Marvel Studios movie. So who knows? The Eternals is going to be a kind of a group movie where they explore some of the original superheroes that came to Earth a long time ago. We're also going to get Top Gun Maverick, the sequel to the 1986 classic Top Gun. That's coming our way June 26th. Tom Cruise.
Definitely excited about that one. If there's anyone on the list that I'm probably most excited about, it's Top Gun coming back. I love the original. I love fighter jets and all of that since I was a little kid. Iron Eagle, can't go wrong. So to get another film built kind of like that for the first time in a long while, scratch that itch of living out like I was a fighter jet pilot. That never happened.
Heck,
super pumped about that.
Heck yeah. Hopefully we get some Kenny Loggins on the soundtrack as well. Then we have No Time to Die on April 10th. That is the new Bond. Daniel Craig's been Bond for a long time.
That's true. He has been Bond for, 10 plus years?
10 plus years. It feels like way longer than Pierce Brosnan was ever Bond. I don't have hard numbers on that, so I could be wrong. But it just feels like he's been Bond longer than anyone else has been Bond. Then we have Tenet, which is the latest Christopher Nolan film coming at us on July 17th. It's going to have John David Washington and Robert Pattinson. It's a time-traveling action thriller. I'm really excited for this. I love Christopher Nolan.
Yeah, it's Christopher Nolan. Almost enough said. Anything he puts out is worth at least going and experiencing, and I think almost every time that they live up to the hype.
Yeah, whether it's Interstellar, which I actually do enjoy Interstellar, Inception, Memento. If you haven't seen Memento, go watch Memento. It's a very early Christopher Nolan work, and it is incredible.
Exactly.
Also going to see Venom 2 on October 2nd. Tom Hardy coming back as his role as Eddie Brock. We're also going to see a Woody Harrelson Carnage.
I'm as much as I like the first Venom and Tom Hardy was spot on. I'm more excited to see what crazy Woody Harrelson's gonna do as Carnage, and then what that might set up for like a Venom 3 or anything else that may happen in that realm. So
could be cool. Andy Serkis is directing as well, so I don't know if that's his directorial debut. I'm leaning that it's probably not, but I do like Andy Serkis. We'll get Birds of Prey, which is a DC movie coming on February 7th. It's going to be mostly centered around Harley Quinn. Yeah. And then it's also Wonder Woman 84 coming on June 5th.
Yeah, let's talk about Wonder Woman 84. Definitely is going to be the better one there. The Birds of Prey movie looks unnecessary and kind of silly. And with DC being kind of floundering at times, like I just think it's going to be another flop for them, and another kind of stain on their record. Like, yeah, Margot Robbie is hot, and Margot Robbie did a great job as Harley Quinn, but I don't see that being enough or strong enough to be the lead of her own movie.
Right.
Especially, it's just all female Suicide Squad kind of, and I don't know. It didn't excite me when I saw the trailer, but
to me, it feels like a response to Black Widow.
Yeah, something along those lines, which I would have rather them just kept on with Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
And stuck with that, from a DC perspective, because Wonder Woman 84 does look pretty strong. There was a few kind of whack-ass moments in the trailer, like when she lassos the lightning bolt. I kind of laughed, but everything else looks pretty solid. They're definitely interested for that one.
100%. That's why I gave the Birds of Prey the... you just don't know. Who knows? Maybe it'll blow us away. Probably not, but maybe. We're also going to see Mulan, the live-action remake of Mulan, on March 27th. Any thoughts on Mulan, Chris?
I saw the trailer recently. It looks good. I'm sure it'll have some cool action, but I'm really like the live-action Disney movies for the most part are pretty low on my list. I'll catch them if I catch them, and if I don't, I don't know how much I'm worried about it.
Yeah. I really like the Mulan story, so I'm actually kind of excited about that one. We'll also see Ghostbusters Afterlife on July 10th. This one appears to be a direct sequel to the original Ghostbusters. It's got Paul Rudd in it, Finn Wolfhard from Stranger Things, and then McKenna Grace. She's been in a few other things. She actually played, I believe she was the little girl, Carol Danvers from Captain Marvel.
Okay.
So, but
I don't think I recognized her.
Yeah, IMDb helped. So
the Ghostbusters trailer, when they released it, it looked way better than I expected. Just especially after what happened with the recent Ghostbusters remake. I really am hoping that this ends up being the true revitalization of the IP. Always loved the Ghostbusters and the characters and the story, the concept, right? But it was just really faded after Ghostbusters 2 back at the end of the 80s. So hopefully they can kind of rebirth it truly, and maybe we can see future spin-offs or additional movies come for the Ghostbusters franchise.
Let's hope so. And we also are going to have Bill and Ted Face the Music coming our way on August 21st.
Had to throw it in there. How do you not mention Bill and Ted coming back? Definitely pumped about that. Seeing Keanu kind of in another role we haven't seen him in for a while, especially as he's been doing all the John Wick and everything. So it should be a fun film. If nothing else, it'll be a fun film.
It'll be goofy. It'll be fun, and support Keanu Reeves. He deserves our support. He's immortal and amazing.
Keanu. How many times can we say Keanu in this episode?
So some other notables here before we switch it up and go TV side. We have Bloodshot. That is a comic book movie featuring Vin Diesel. The Morbius featuring Jared Leto, which is Morbius is a classic Spider-Man villain, but once again, it's not a Marvel Studios movie. Legally Blonde 3, just because Legally Blonde 3 is happening. It's been a long time since Legally Blonde 2, but you never know. Artemis Fowl, is also coming out this year. Fast and Furious 9 might as well be Fast and Furious 87. And then Godzilla vs. Kong. Real brief on Godzilla vs. Kong. I'm actually really excited for this because they've pieced together the different King Kong and Godzilla movies from over the years and somehow made a canon universe for them just with
wow.
post-credit scenes.
That's pretty cool. I really have been out of the Godzilla, situation for a while. I haven't caught not the original one. I haven't caught the most recent one. I saw the one with Bryan Cranston from a couple years ago.
Oh, when he was in it for 2 seconds.
But I heard, I heard that Godzilla vs. the Monsters was really, really good. I just haven't caught it yet. But King Kong, take him or leave him. It'll be an interesting way to.
Let's see what happens. Who knows? I mean, it's such a niche group. Like, I don't know. It's one of those things where I doubt I'll go pay. I doubt I'll go to the movie theater and I'll go pay.
That's what I'm getting.
But like, if it shows up on HBO Go or Netflix or Amazon Prime, one of the 1,000 subscriptions, if it shows up there, I might spend an afternoon and watch it. Why not?
Exactly. All right. Well, let's wrap up here and run through a couple of the top items for TV that we know that are coming this year. We've got everything from streaming services to the networks. So I'm going to run through them real quick in the interest of time, and then we'll kind of get some quick wrap-up comments on it if you're okay with that. So coming out this year, and I don't have dates for most of them because they get to be a little bit more tricky with TV, but we've got Season 4 of Stranger Things. We should be getting Season 2 of The Witcher, but I did see a recent statement that it may actually be 2021. It was just too awesome not to also mention here. We're going to get Season 2 of The Boys, Season 2 of Mandalorian, Season 3 of Westworld. We've got Umbrella Academy Season 2 coming out, the debut of Picard, the Star Trek show focusing all around the legendary Jean-Luc Picard. That's going to be on the CBS streaming service. Jean-Luc. And then on Disney Plus, we're going to see Falcon and Winter Soldier. They also announced recently that WandaVision will actually be in 2020 and not 2021. And then moving over to more of the network type items, we've got The Magicians coming back, Brooklyn Nine-Nine coming back. Of course, Arrow, Supergirl, and Legends of Tomorrow are coming back, and definitely have to call out it's going to be the final season of Arrow. We've also got the final season of Homeland coming up. If you're a big Homeland fan, that's been running for a long time. Narcos Mexico is coming back. And then I've actually been really interested to go back and catch back up on The Expanse now that it's moved to Amazon.
Yeah.
Just because it looks like they've really upped the production level there. So I know that is a ton of TV shows, but out of that list there, Kyle, what are you most looking forward to?
You can't not say The Mandalorian Season 2. That one's gonna be amazing. Stranger Things Season 4, pretty much everything Disney Plus is putting out there as far as Falcon and the Winter Soldier. WandaVision, maybe. I mean, I'm gonna watch it because it's just Marvel, so I'm gonna watch it. Maybe not as excited as I am for Falcon and Winter Soldier. I need to find a way to watch Picard. I'm not sure how I'm.
Your big start.
I don't. Yeah.
I know you need that.
I don't know how I'm gonna do it because I don't want to pay for another streaming service, but I need to watch Picard somehow. And then what?
You could do like what you did with the PS Now. You could just wait for them all to come out. Pay for it for like a month, knock them all out, and boom, you're done.
Yeah. That could work. And then
get your fix.
Lastly, Westworld 3. I feel like I've had to wait an eternity for Westworld 3.
Yeah, for sure. Westworld 3 is probably top of the list just because of that, and the fact that we've been waiting for so long with the end of Game of Thrones. They delayed it, but we got Aaron Paul coming into that. It's kind of moving from just the theme park and those boundaries over it from what the trailers have seen. It looks like they're moving out into the real world.
Right.
So it should take it to a whole nother level. So I'm definitely with you on that one. Definitely pumped about it.
Excited to see that expanded universe.
Yeah, exactly. The expanded universe should be real interesting, and how the robots, really interact in the real world and with people that don't maybe necessarily know that they're interacting with robots from, what it seemed like in the trailers. So I definitely can't wait for Brooklyn Nine-Nine to come back. I know you got me into that show, and we just blitzed through it. while the break was between last season and this season. So we'll be catching up on that. But I also had to mention that I'm kind of sad to see Homeland and Arrow go. As much as I haven't caught the last two seasons just from a time perspective. Arrow's got, a million episodes per season, but those have both been great long-running shows. And, to see anything wrap up like that, it's always a little bit of a bummer. So.
Yeah, Arrow was one that I'd say around season 5 I dipped. Like I just couldn't keep up. It was crazy between Arrow and Flash and Legends of Tomorrow. It was too much television. I literally just couldn't keep up. So I fell behind and then eventually just abandoned it. But I always said, okay, well, when the series ends and it all goes up on Netflix, because it goes on Netflix pretty quickly, this will definitely be a watch through.
Yeah, that's exactly where we're at. Was when we cut cable, we also kind of lost track on some of the shows that we were watching week to week. And we went to mostly streaming services. So that was where we ended with that one. Was once they all get on Netflix and it's over, we'll finish it up and see what happens to Oliver Queen and all of that.
And I have heard that show, while it dipped in the middle, it returned to form in the late seasons. So I'm excited to get it back. And I like Stephen Amell. I'm gonna support Stephen Amell.
Oh, for sure. And it's just tough when you make shows that have 20, 23 episodes a season and you go 5, 6, 7 seasons. Like, there's always going to be some downtimes, and we definitely experienced some of that with Arrow, because it was right around then that we had dropped it off as far as our cable goes. So I'm really hopeful, though, that they give it the justice and give him a good finish. They've got so much that is built out on the Arrowverse, since they started that show with Supergirl, Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, all these shows, Black Lightning kind of operating in that
Batwoman debuting.
Batwoman now. Yeah, I forgot about Batwoman now. So it deserves all of the backing to get a good ending and then let these other shows go and continue the legacy.
Yeah, for sure.
So, all right, there it is. There's a ton coming in the world of geekery, whether it's consoles, games, TV, movies, and then a ton more that we couldn't even cover here today. But hopefully that gives you a good preview on what is to come. Get your pre-orders lined up. Save your money. There's going to be a lot of things to spend it on this year. And as always, let us know if there's anything that we missed here that you're excited for in 2020. Thank you for listening to GeeK KetchUp. If you enjoyed today's chapter, please remember to subscribe to GeeK KetchUp on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Check out GeeK KetchUp on Facebook and YouTube, and follow us on Twitter and Instagram @GeeK KetchUp Pod for updates on new episodes every 2 weeks. Stay saucy.